begin, in the interim, can someone just try to get whoever is missing on the phone, on the line, please? Mariella, say those names again, please.
Carrie Drew and Patty Bay Ross are missing now.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, board members, General Manager, staff, members of the public. A few housekeeping rules before we begin. In order to minimize background interference, as always, please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices, and silence or mute all speakers and microphones unless you're speaking. This is a virtual meeting. We'll take a formal roll call. Please say here or present when I call your name. Chair.
Here.
Board Member Adams. Oh, I can see him. Board Member Adams.
Alexander, you start getting up, okay?
He's Board Member Adams is there, but he's on mute.
Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes, just say yes, you're here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, please, you can go back on mute. Thank you. Paula, Board Member Gavin, sorry. Here. Board Member G-Wold.
Present, thank you.
Yeah. Member Gonzalez.
Here.
Member Young.
Present.
And Vito's here, General Manager.
Here.
Yes, thank you. And of course, I'm here. Chair, there.
Okay.
Mariella, there are no members of the public ready to speak, correct? Chair, there are no members of the public.
Excuse me, Jackie, there is one attendee that is dialing in. If Janelle, can you unmute them to find out who they are?
Okay.
That looks like Miss Veronique Montrose.
Oh, honey.
Janelle?
Yes, they've been unmuted.
Hi, Ms. Montrose, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay,
Thank
Chair,
you.
there is one member of the public wishing to provide comments, Veronique Montrose, from an organization called Community Member. Ms. Montrose?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Do you have comments you wish? Hello, can you hear us? We're hearing you.
Yes, I can hear you clearly now. Sorry. The
Okay,
audio on my
terrific.
phone is a little tricky.
Okay, do you have comments you wish to make on an item from the calendar today?
Yes. I wanted to talk a little bit about the transformation plan and also the nitro waste management plan. I believe you have an item about capital improvement projects.
Yes. Please proceed. You have 3 minutes, so you can begin. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Russ, the board, and community members at large. I would like to read from a letter that I submitted to the CEO office earlier December, which speaks to some of the issues that correspond to what's on your agenda today. This is in reference to the DeWitt Clinton houses, waste management policies and practices, which on behalf of the community, I'm putting forth these issues and also recommendations. Some disregard for the safety, protection, and quality of life of not only NYCHA's residents and non-residents, but also the surrounding community. I submitted complaints to the NYCHA Manhattan Borough Office, as well as to Councilwoman Diana Ayala's office probably a few weeks ago. There was some resolution that seems to be very temporary or not adhered to based on Councilwoman Ayala's presentation to 250 or 230 Broadway. Please excuse me if I'm incorrect with the address. So some of the quality of life conditions refer to the waste management practices, operations of the construction equipment, particularly the John Deere compact truck, which arrives in our community around 5:30 to 6 o'clock in the morning, weekdays, weekends, and holidays. As you can imagine, it poses a quality of life issue with the noise and with the surrounding work that goes along with this process. The noise generated from this process has been completely disruptive to the community, and we're looking to seek some resolution expeditiously because of these issues. We also would like to put forward these recommendations, which go along with your NYCHA 2.0 plan. Is the modernization and standardized waste practices, management processes and equipment, and the retraining of staff on the new waste management practices to reduce the noise and improve the quality of life of the community. The adjustment and agreement that the community seeks is to schedule the waste management processing task from an early morning task to an afternoon task on weekdays, weekends, and holidays to reduce noise pollution during the early morning hours. There's also some environmental and safety rules complaints that the community would like to put forward. The use of the John Deere compact truck is used on sidewalks, internal, external garbage processing sites. The obstruction of sidewalks for several hours with the large bins positions halfway on the sidewalk and street, which restricts pedestrian use. The failure to lock the processing site doors, which invite loitering and illegal activity in front of and around the perimeter of the compactor. Would also like to mention that this compactor on the DeWitt Clinton Houses campus is also very close to, just feet away from a community center at 120 East 110th Street, excuse me. It is also home to the James Weldon Johnson Head Start program. We also have issues regarding the idling of John Deere flatbed vehicles, and which increases the gas emissions and air pollution. So we recommend for the waste management practices to include adherence to traffic and safety rules when operating the John Deere compact truck, display signage to alert pedestrians of obstructed walkway, lock the processing site doors to maintain safety of the perimeter of the site. We would like to turn off the stationary motorized vehicles to reduce gas emissions, and also for the corporation to commit to building the capacity of the staff by conducting routine training and on the policies and practices. So the community, I'm coming forth as a representative of the community. We welcome the board's leadership and support to expedite these sustainable waste management practices and resolutions to the above complaints. We believe that these are aligned with the goals and initiatives of NYCHA Waste Management Plan 2.0, and that the implementation of these recommendations will improve the safety, protection, and quality of life and conditions of the residents, non-residents, and community. We thank you so much, and we look forward to your response.
Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you for your comments, Ms. Montrose.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, that concludes our public comments portion, and we may now proceed with the regular calendar. The first order of business is.
Excuse me, Madam
Pardon, we do
Secretary.
actually?
We have another phone call attendee.
And who was that, please? Is that
I'd ask them
Manguito?
to unmute.
Okay. Could you please have the person identify himself or herself?
They need to unmute themselves.
Phone number ending in 0297, please unmute yourself.
We're now joining the meeting.
They just left, so I guess they didn't need to speak.
Okay, so Chair, that really concludes our public comments portion, and we may now proceed with the regular calendar. The first order of business is to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting held on Tuesday, November 24th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
Motion, Victor Gonzalez.
Gonzalez, second.
Second, Board Member Young.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All? None opposed. Thank you very much. We'll now move to a reports section or item on the agenda.
Brush your teeth first.
Can everybody please mute their microphones, please, if you're not speaking? Thank you. Chair Russ will be presenting on a blueprint for change as the first report.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, and good morning to all the board members, staff, and members of the public. And before I go into this update on the blueprint, I just wanted to wish all of you and really everyone participating today a very happy new year. I know at the end of the meeting we'll be looking to wrap up, and I just wanted to get that sentiment out to all of you because I look forward to a much better 2021 and hopeful we can begin to get past COVID and get into the changes that we need to make. I wanted to provide the board an update, and I'm going to go through this because we have been engaging the public, residents, and others in a very significant way. We are going to be doing so again in January. We're doing town halls and individual small group resident meetings almost on a weekly basis at this point. And we have introduced or had introduced on our behalf proposed legislation around the Preservation Trust. So let's go to the first slide, and I'll go through this fairly quickly. We are looking to move ahead on three fronts: the capital plan, which is what we'll talk about today. There'll be an organizational, reorganizational document coming to you sometime early next year that will include the transformation elements. That was out for public comment. That comment period closed on December 28th. We'll be compiling those comments and working with the monitor. Our goal, and this is tentative, is to work with the monitor to produce a reorganization plan that his team could approve on or about March 1st. There could be additional approvals required from HUD. And then we want to engage in a period that would include working groups to frame the implementation steps that are necessary for the reorganization. And we hope to have residents included in those working groups to provide us with feedback and to help shape the structure. So that reorganization is taking place under the terms of the HUD agreement, and we're very hopeful that we'll be able to begin to implement that by the end of next year. The capital plan we'll talk about, and then of course, if we get the capital, we want to make sure that we have a strong jobs and recovery approach. If I could go to the next slide, please. There's nothing changed on this one. We have 175,000 apartments. We still have 62,000 units slated for RAD and PACT. The stabilization plan we're talking about, and we intend to address the other 110,000 apartments. Our estimate of need for those 110,000 apartments to stabilize, that means to address the compliance issues in the HUD agreement, is around $18 billion with a comprehensive approach to each property and each building. Next slide, please. Our work is proposed is first to attack mold by replacing all the piping, all the hot and cold risers in the property and the building, as well as the waste lines. This is the largest item, around $9.5 billion. And to put this in context, the mold remediation and the mold reconstruction efforts just for NYCHA are approximately 3.5 times the total capital allocation that was signed into law in the federal 2021 budget. So we're talking very significant needs here, which is why we have proposed the blueprint steps. But we want to redo these buildings so that we can eliminate these root causes, and piping in the walls along with the roofing and other issues really need to be addressed if we're going to tackle this problem in a way that gives the apartments back to the families without fear of mold reoccurring. Lead abatement, removal of the lead at $1 billion. Heat, again, redoing our heat plants so that we begin to decouple them from these centralized systems and go to a building-based heat plant approach with backup provided for both heat and hot water. Redoing the elevators, redoing the pests and waste management at these various properties, and looking to address several important but miscellaneous items, which are front door access, cameras, intercoms, and gas risers. So if we address those, we estimate that's an $18 billion need. If we can raise more money, in fact, if we can raise about another $7 billion, we could begin to address community centers, grounds, exterior cladding, and additional work that we feel is essential for the buildings, but isn't specifically called out in the compliance agreement with HUD. Next slide, please. These are our funding gaps. The stabilization gap, we need to raise about 11.2 billion. If we're successful in raising more money and can take on some of these other items, it increases our funding gap to around $18.1 billion. Next slide. Our plan has been, as discussed since we started the rollout in July, the creation of a separate entity called the New York City Public Housing Preservation Trust. The reason for the creation of this entity is we're trying to kind of use a key and lock approach to federal subsidy. The key is that we have to transfer the property to unlock the additional subsidy that the units need. If we have to effect a transfer, we want to make sure that that is to an entity that is going to support and help maintain these units for use for very low income families, protect the families and protect the properties. We hit upon the idea of the trust as we started to look for various models, and a school construction authority was a model that we latched onto. And we latched onto it initially to look at the procurement, because they have some expedited procurement practices that were attractive. But as we began to think about it, we saw a larger role, and that is the trust would receive the units. The trust would have a ground lease with NYCHA. NYCHA is not giving up its ownership. In turn, the trust contracts back to NYCHA for various management and maintenance services. The transfer unlocks the tenant protection vouchers, which carry the additional subsidy. The trust is used to expedite the construction, and the trust is used to create the financing vehicles that we would need to increase the capital investment. The trust is in partner with the use of the tenant protection vouchers. We have been in negotiations and discussions with HUD for several months now on the methods that we're thinking about. These have been technical discussions with the staff there, the career staff, that have been very well received, and we're very encouraged so far by our conversations with HUD. So we're looking to access these tenant protection vouchers, which we become eligible for at the time the transfer is approved for all the occupied apartments, whether they're occupied on the date of the transfer or have been occupied 2 years prior. And then if we're successful in creating the trust and attaching the vouchers to the properties, we begin to address our stabilization and recovery needs. Next slide, please. Again, there's no mystery to this. We are looking to increase the amount of subsidy available to each of our units, raising our income when all the sources of income, rent, capital, and operating subsidy are considered, from $1,250 per unit to $1,900 per unit. That additional $650 per unit per month would enable NYCHA to raise, if we had 25,000 tenant protection vouchers, $3.4 billion. This would allow us to address many of the capital needs I discussed with you earlier. And this is the method that we currently have given the federal structure around the preservation of public housing. So the transfer is necessary to increase the subsidy. The increased subsidy is then used to leverage dollars to make the capital investments and to fix the units. Next slide, please. The trust is a fully public entity. As we've gone out into the community, we have heard many rumors about the trust. And I wanted to reemphasize to the board today and that this is a public entity. It is created under state law. It is not a smokescreen for some kind of privatization. And that is one of the reasons we wanted to take it through a process in Albany, because we wanted the trust to sort of be a co-equal partner with NYCHA and affect a public-to-public transfer of the property. The trust would receive the units. There would be a ground lease. The trust would contract with the management agreement back to NYCHA for management and maintenance and other services. So this retains end-to-end public control of the property. The requirements for income are the same. The rents stay the same. And we can get the opportunity to raise the capital and address the capital needs. In addition, the state legislation codifies all the resident protections and secures affordability for these properties in perpetuity. There are other benefits as well, just in doing the capital work, which I've talked about in prior discussions. Next slide, please. So legislation was introduced in the state assembly and is likely to be introduced again next year as the session ends. But it's this bill, and we can make copies of the bill available, creates the trust in section 603, cements the resident rights and opportunities. And we're talking about a comprehensive package here. This is not just a nod in the direction. This ensures that the rights are consistent with public housing, including affordability. It guarantees the operation of the property at low, very low, and extremely low income. These are HUD definitions that are embedded in the actual legislation that we're asking our state lawmakers to consider. It preserves the right to organize the resident councils, the grievance process, the automatic lease renewal, succession rights, and all of Part 964 in the federal rules are embedded into what we're proposing here. That section of the federal law is the section on resident councils, elections, the structure of the citywide resident organizations, and resident management corporations. In addition, the legislation also pulls in adherence to Section 3, as well as MBE and WBE requirements. The sections 609 through 610 create the alternative procurement methods that I mentioned earlier that were attractive to us, including things like design build and construction manager at risk, and allow us to use a best value criteria for selection of a vendor. In addition, the actual selection criteria that we have to use are spelled out in the bill, and that includes really concrete provisions for MBE, WBE as a weighted factor, along with economic opportunities for residents as a weighted factor. And lastly, we're looking at creating prevailing wage and doing project labor agreements for this work. So I just wanted to be clear with the board members today, because I know you're out in the community. I know you might get stopped and folks are saying, hey, I heard it's this, I heard it's that. And this is what we're doing. We want it to be transparent, and we want this legislation to be strong because we think that by including these elements, we can address many of the concerns that residents have relayed to us over the past several years. If we can go to the next slide. I've mentioned this before, and it's again, we have the potential, if we can raise this money, to impact our energy, impact job creation, impact resident health, and impact economic recovery. By simply taking on the heat plants alone, if we did nothing else, we could change our energy profile in such a way that those savings would be significant and allow us to finance more green opportunities later on as we begin this effort to recapitalize our buildings. There are the potential for really solid jobs in construction, the creation of supply chain jobs if we assemble any of the pieces of equipment or materials that we might have to buy. And we have the potential to do retraining as we bring on new technologies. We're going to be looking for health partners as we do the work in the buildings, very much interested in co-locating medical services close to the families that live at our properties. And lastly, based on studies done with prior public housing capital spending, we estimate that every dollar we spend creates another $2.12 of economic impact in the community. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I wanted to let the board know that we have been hearing a lot of myths about the trust and this whole presentation that we've been making in the community. We've heard that, and I'll go through this list slightly. We've heard that there's no tenant rights when you transfer the Section 8. We've heard that you'll no longer have rent protections, that you'll see increases in eviction, that the residents will have no federal protections at all. We've heard that there is a private owner and discretion to provide services. We've been told that there's no resident leadership input, although we have presented this as our ideas looking for that input. And we've been told that the properties will be owned and operated by private investors and banks. None of these are true. The residents will have significant rights. They're going to have full rights because we're incorporating them into the state legislation and into the documents that control these transactions. The way I like to think about this is these rights are going to be embedded in the very ground that our families are walking on, in the very ground that the building stands on. There's going to be the right to organize, the succession rights, and we're willing to put that into a contract with each family as a resident family rights and protections contract, if that would help folks feel more secure. We have embedded the rent protections. They're already in Section 8, and we are carrying over the public housing protections into this program. So between the state law, the documents, and the existing Section 8 protections for families, the full complement of protections will be retained after conversion. There is no private owner in this model. NYCHA is the fee owner, and it has a ground lease with the trust. NYCHA continues to provide services under the agreements with the trust. We continue to seek resident input on these ideas. We understand that we presented a set of ideas that were pretty well formed, but the reason for that is we had to address the federal issues that were necessary to provide more subsidy. We're still looking for resident input, and we want to seek and actually get more resident input. We can still modify the bill. We can still modify our plans based on that. And finally, there is no private entity here. The properties are owned and operated by NYCHA. The ground lease is for the construction work and the financing, and we're still able to receive funding from HUD and the state and the city. Next slide, please. We've also heard that what happens if the federal government does not fund the voucher program?
There we go.
So we're actually experiencing this right now in the public housing program. The 2021 federal budget provides for $2.67 billion in capital spending for the entire public housing program in the US. NYCHA's share of that is about 500 million, maybe a little less depending on the formula. But my point is the capital number has not changed in the past 5 years and was underfunded in the 5 years before that. We are not experiencing any kind of appropriations at the capital level that reaches the needs of the public housing program, not just in New York City, but nationally. And if we look at what's happened in the past with public housing, this is the program that gets cut. The voucher program does not get cut in the same manner or extent that the public housing program has been cut. There have been years when we've operated at 89 cents on the dollar or 92 cents on the dollar. What we're saying is by transferring the units into a voucher-based, a property-based subsidy, we think we're going to be more secure. The cuts that have happened in Section 8 have been to the administrative fee that is paid to the housing authority to run the program, not to the subsidy. And it's the subsidy amounts that we need to secure to both pay our day-to-day operations and also to finance the capital money that we want. So there's not a single federal program that isn't at risk in any appropriations year, but we think the stronger of the two paths is the project-based subsidy and the Section 8. So that's the reason why we're proposing it. We think it has a better chance of surviving if we have an issue. And in fact, we're already experiencing issues with the public housing program in the lack of capital that's been appropriated by Congress, no matter the administration. This is a bipartisan thing. It's not it's happened under Republican and Democratic presidents, but the voucher stays steady. And that's one of the reasons we want to make the transfer. We've heard if you decide to move away from a NYCHA development, that you take your subsidy with you. That's not exactly how it works. The subsidy is attached to the apartment. If you do desire to move, you can request a new voucher. And if we have one available, you are eligible to receive that voucher. And the voucher that's attached to the property does not go away. We've heard that we're going to skimp on repairs, that we're simply going to give you a new countertop or new kitchen cabinets. We can't afford to do that. We have to make major repairs. We have to open up the walls and open up these buildings and modernize them with modern technology. When I looked at our audit, which is on the agenda today, look at the useful life for capital investment. That the auditors count 40 years as useful life. We have so many buildings and so many systems past that we're well past what the auditors consider to be a reasonable period of time. So we need to make this investment now. And lastly, we've heard that really the trust is some kind of smokescreen for a for-profit entity. The trust is not for-profit, it's public. It's a public benefit corporation, which means it has a mission established by its state law. It cannot deviate from that mission. If there is a surplus or extra money, it must be put back into the mission. There are no shareholders. It's not a corporation in the sense that General Motors or Apple is one. It's specifically designed to be NYCHA's partner to preserve the units. So this is important. And we really want to make sure that the board understands this is a public-to-public transfer, and it's not an attempt to privatize. The last thing I'll say, the trust does borrow funds to do this work in the same manner that any municipality borrows money on the bond market or secures a loan for capital investments. So it's no different in that sense than other public entities that are working in the city or around the country. I'm going to stop there, and if the board members have questions, I'd be glad to answer some.
Great. Adams.
Yes. Hi, Joe.
Yeah. First, I saw snippets of your last encounter with some of our state assembly people, and I was really feeling your pain there, you know? And it reminded me of the McCarthy hearings. You know about that, right?
I do, sir. Very well. Yes.
So great. When the public in general, when people don't understand something, they mistrust it. And my work with the PAC people, what they explained to me, and I keep forgetting her name. She said there's a lady at the agency, when you're going to deal with the public, we discussed that making the codified language that you're going to present to them as close to what people have in hair salons and barbershop to cause and effect. Numbers and stuff scare people. As Vilma pointed out to me, a lot of people don't understand it. Like me and her discussed it one time, people don't understand the administrative language of what's going on. So and then rumors and innuendo or wrong things out there. But if you can make this these written things as close to a conversation as possible, and as we discussed earlier, I would feel very great going forward in supporting all of this, knowing that there's something in there letting you know the tenants have a reasonable amount of responsibility, or they might not be there. And I know that there's stuff given down the line to them, but just a little snippet of something saying, hey, you don't wash the laundry, you won't be able to, stay in the bed or something. You know where I'm trying to go with this conversation.
Yeah, and no, Joe, I do. So we're going to begin to reframe a lot of the documents along the lines you're talking about, and I would be glad to share our drafts with you and any of the other board members to get your reactions, because we've heard the same thing from a number of folks. And we want to sort of convert some of these ideas into something that people can latch onto. We're going to also be doing, I think, a rent insert, more hard copy documents. So we will put those out over time, because we know that everyone doesn't have access to internet or computer, and we want to get that out there as well. We have done one rent insert already, but we'll do another. So we're really, to be honest, none of us expected all these ideas to come out and everyone say, hallelujah, we have a plan. We need to have the debate, and we recognize that. So, and we have a lot of strong opinions on this. A lot of folks don't trust NYCHA, or they don't believe that we need to raise the money this way. They think maybe we'll get some big congressional appropriation. Maybe we will. But this plan can use that money as well. It's not like it's simply designed. It's designed to do this thing, but it's a little bit like a Swiss Army knife. We could use it if we get other funding as well too. So,
and you put the pictures that people have been posting, positive pictures on Facebook of because people can't believe what they're seeing when the person posted it, that these were NYCHA apartments. So some of those illustrations might be helpful as well. Give people, you got to keep people visuals and keep the language as close to a conversation as possible. But I know conducting business on this level, you have to have the administrative numbers to show where we're trying to get. I understand that part, but the mistrust and stuff comes when people don't understand things and they're afraid. So that's basically all I have on it. So, but maybe include some of the pictures showing before and after, when people get their teeth fixed, and definitely, put something that, and I know people might not like it, but when you're honest with people and they know that greatly what they might or might do might affect them taking this ride with us, that would be greatly appreciated, at least on my behalf.
All right, thank you.
We had the discussion, and I haven't seen it in anything yet, but the young lady from the PAC program, she said, you have an excellent lady there. She gave me her name. I wrote it down somewhere. She said, this woman knows how to talk to residents like if they're talking in a hair salon, explaining terminology to them, letting them know that you will be, on the outside looking in. If you follow where I'm going. I want to type everybody all the time because other people have questions, but we've had this discussion already. So that language has to be made more palatable.
Okay,
All right.
thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
Paula?
Thank you. I just am so supportive of this whole program and just so desirous of it moving forward. But I did want to clarify one thing, which I again in the midst came out. When completed, all of our apartments will now be Section 8. Is that correct?
That would be the plan, yes.
But a different kind of Section 8 in that we'll be managing them and maintaining them.
That's correct. It's the tenant protection vouchers are a creation of Congress. They created them for other reasons, and it's migrated over time to any transfer, whether it's public housing. These vouchers are also available in for other Section 8 properties that might transfer for some reason. But we're going to attach them to the building, to the apartment. So it's a project-based subsidy. There'll be a contract between NYCHA and the trust. It's called a Housing Assistance Payments Contract. Now, like any contract, it has terms and conditions. And our proposal is that we would attach a lot of the requirements that are in the legislation also to the subsidy contract, so that NYCHA has the control of the dollar that goes to the trust to pay for the operating and the debt costs. The trust is contracting back to NYCHA, and this is the reorganized NYCHA. This is the NYCHA after we do the reorganization that's required in the compliance agreement with HUD. This is where we'll be working with the monitor, his team, and eventually I think some of the HUD and even Southern District staff next year as we try to hammer out what the new organization will look like. So yes, the trust contracts back to NYCHA for management, maintenance, and other services. So we have public entity as the owner, public entity as the financing and construction vehicle, and a public workforce managing the site. So that makes it a little different than a lot of the Section 8 deals that you might see around town. And also very different from RAD in that regard.
Right. And so there's something in there in the communications back to the point of how to present this to residents. You know, it's a new Section 8. It's sort of an image of an upgraded opportunity. You know, there's something about that, I think, that has some power to it. And I know we can test that with residents, but I just wanted to, you know, clarify for all of us, but then to say it's a positive step. And if we can create that sort of positivity around it, becoming a new way of thinking about our public housing.
Yes, I mean, I have seen, we saw comments where folks have said we're proposing to eliminate public housing in the city of New York. And, you know, you can say, well, we are changing the subsidy platform, but we're not eliminating it. We're preserving it. It's not correct to say that the way that it's worded is intended to make people fearful. And the preservation is long-term and lasting. No one is talking about displacing families. Yes, we may need temporary moves while your unit's under construction, because I know if you're in an apartment and we're trying to open up your walls to do the bathroom, you may want to be somewhere else for a couple of weeks while we do that repair. But we're not eliminating public housing in the way that phrase is being tossed around. It's intended to be scary. We're preserving these units. We're not displacing families. And I think that's at the heart of it, that is what this program is about. We need that extra $650 per unit per month. I've said in some of the presentations, it's like the unit went out and got itself a second job. And it's bringing in additional money, and we're going to use that money to finance the repair work.
Yeah, it's the new public housing.
It's the new public housing, yes.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions from the board? Victor, I think you're on mute, Victor.
You are.
So
There you go.
hi, okay. So first of all, let's kind of go back a little bit and discuss some of the terminology or something that is said to residents so that you know where this fear is coming from. The very first time they talked about Section 8, the moment you become a Section 8, the first thing that NYCHA was telling the resident was, you are no longer a resident of public housing. That was a statement that was made to every public housing resident who changed. So that in itself is part of what makes this fear real to them. Although you're guaranteeing and you're putting all these mechanisms in place for it to not happen, that is the fear because of that terminology. And it kind of hits on what Paula just said, Board Member Gavin. You know, we have to make it friendly. We have to make it sound like, you know, it's going to work for you. It's for real. So that's a statement that you may want to state, but put it in a different fashion so that you can, you know, really make it sound a lot better. Moving forward, in the change in the blueprint, there's some terminology that yet seems to not depict exactly what's happening. But that's for another day. I'd rather talk to you on that more on a one-on-one.
Yeah, no, I would appreciate
okay?
it, Joe.
That would be more on a one-on-one, and you'll understand why when I'm speaking with you, because these are my own opinions. But being that the plan is going through an evolution from the beginning stage where you phrased one thing and this is the way it's going, due to a lot of the meetings and some of the things from the monitor's office and the federal government, you know, it's metamorphosizing into something else and the language is changing. So what I would like, and I hope that my fellow board members would agree, is that when you get the finished product, exactly the way it's going to be, it's going to remain and is being sent to the government for all these approvals. If we can get an actual copy of the wording as it changes, excuse me, from beginning what it transferred to,
Sure,
especially the wording.
sure. So we're going to be recasting based on Joe and Paula and Victor, your comments, among others. I mean, we've been rolling this out now since July, so we're getting feedback on what's working and not working. So what I'd like to propose is sharing some of this with the board in the January and February meetings, so you can see where it's evolving to and getting your reactions. There's nothing, no substitute really, I think, from having you get the material and say, this word works, this word doesn't work. So we'd be open to kind of vetting that as we evolve the process. And keep in mind that we are still working with HUD. I don't have anything new to report to the board on this, except to say that we've had just excellent conversations with the HUD technical team. Again, this is the same group of people that will be there after the president-elect takes office. These are the technicians and the managers of the various programs. So those conversations continue and have been very positive. And I'm encouraged that even after President Biden gets his new folks in, we're going to have established a working relationship with the staff that, frankly, I have never. They've been incredibly responsive, and I and all the HUD folks know that I'm not kind if they're not. But they have been very responsive to this in a way that I think has been tremendously helpful for us to talk through some of the background or administrative issues that we're going to have to deal with.
Okay. And my last point would be, and again, this is for another conversation, the org chart. I really believe that the org chart is, well, for me, for this layman, kind of convoluted. You know, you really, in my estimate, I can't pinpoint certain things within the org chart. But again, this is for another conversation because I want to save time for today. But
Sure.
I will be looking to speak with you about that.
Sure. And
Okay.
keep in mind that whatever we come up with as a final reorg plan, that's going to have to come back through the board anyway. So you'll have plenty of time to comment.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
That's
Thank
all
you,
I got.
Victor.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Yes. Good morning, Board. Good morning, Chairman Russ. This is Board Member Young.
Hi, board member.
One question.
Yes,
When the language is introduced to the residents in the PAC program, excuse me, I have a cold. I just wanted to make certain that the language is clear concerning the project-based voucher. The language is clear to the folks that they cannot move with this voucher, because what I'm hearing here at my development, which is a part of the PAC program, some of the residents feel that after a year that they can take the voucher and move. So from what I'm hearing from you, and I understand about the project-based voucher myself, that it's not transferable. However, some residents don't believe that it's not transferable.
Sure.
So you mentioned that there may be other vouchers that are transferable that a resident may be able to ask for in the event that they would be willing to move. Would these vouchers be readily available if that was the case?
So the way that HUD deals with this, and they have they have separate rules for the project-based voucher. And first, before you can think about moving, you got to be there at least a year. So you got to do your 12 months.
Yes.
Then if you want to move, you cannot take the project-based voucher with you. It's not transferable. It's locked into that unit. But you can request a tenant-based voucher from our regular voucher program. And the restriction on such a request is, do we have a voucher that's available at the time you make your request? Sometimes we will, and sometimes we won't. And one of the things that we'll have to do if we get this program launched is think about how or can we adjust our tenant-based vouchers. This is a program that Lakeisha administers. Can we adjust that in the administrative plan, which we would actually bring back to the board, to make sure perhaps that we're carrying a pool of some kind of vouchers that could be made available to families who are in the blueprint or have other project-based vouchers. That's never been set up that way, but we're going to have so many families that are going to begin to, if we're successful, migrate. And we want to make sure that at least some of those families that want to move would have access to a voucher. Because there's times when we may have all the vouchers issued through the regular program, and they would have to wait till another voucher gets turned in or becomes available. So that is something we'll have to solve for, but they can ask for a voucher, be put on a waiting list for one, and as vouchers are restored, they could access those and then use that voucher to move. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it. It's not quite as clean a process maybe as a transfer, but I guess folks would argue that transfers are hard to do too.
Yes.
But yeah, so there is potential there for them to move with a different voucher.
Great. Just, I just wanted it to be relayed when the meetings are held with the residents, made it to be mentioned clearly to the residents so that they understand totally what,
right.
what the
And
PBV is all about.
No, you're right. This is the property keeps the original voucher. The resident can become eligible for a tenant-based voucher, and for most folks, that's a step that they're not thinking about. But we'll make that clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. There are no further questions on the chair's report. Thank you very much, Chair Russ. We next have a presentation by our CFO on the 21 to 25 proposed financial plan, and that would lead us right into our calendar items 1 and 2 on the budget. Anika?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anika Lescott, and I'm the Executive Vice President for Finance and Chief Financial Officer of the New York City Housing Authority. Today, I'll be giving a presentation on the proposed 2021 to 2025 financial plan, which covers board's items 1 and 2. Next slide. The agenda today, first, I'll take you through our 2020 year end, then we'll go into the operating plan, followed by the proposed capital plan. Next slide. So first, in 2020, these are November year-to-date spending against our adopted budget. So this shows you that we've received about 85% of the sources of revenue that we expected, and we've used about 91% of our funds for expenses. And this is both our personal expenses and other than personnel services. I would also mention that this slide only goes through November 30th, 2020, and there's a good amount of activity that takes place in the last month of the year. So we do anticipate that we will receive our sources of revenue as projected, and that we will, of course, have to spend out a little bit more, the 10% of the remaining expenses for the remainder of the calendar year. Next slide. These are 2020 year-end projections. So as you can see, when we adopted the budget last year, we were projecting a $91 million surplus. We are very fortunate to be able to project that we will close our year on balance, so we will neither have a surplus nor a deficit. And some of the key items that are driving this are our tenant rent revenue, which I'll talk about more later, but that has decreased significantly from what we adopted. In addition, we have gotten some less revenue, but also more revenue on the CARES Act operating of $120 million, which has been extremely helpful to us. Next slide. So rent collection. Tenant rent comprises about 1/3 of the authority's annual operating revenues. So what happens with our tenant rent revenues impacts us on a day-to-day. We are on track to collect $961 million by year end. However, that's $93 million less than what we collected in 2019, and it's $64 million less than the 2020 budgeted amount. So when you think about what we projected as a $91 million surplus and the losses that we've taken in tenant rent, that explains about 2/3 of it. The other 1/3 can be explained by our increased expenses on coronavirus response. So this chart shows you the budgeted line is that blue line that goes across. So on average, based on our adopted budget, we would have needed to collect $85 million per month. You can see that in January, February, and March, we were doing quite well and actually collecting more than we needed. And then in April, there was a pretty substantial dip, which we attribute to the coronavirus. And we rebounded ever so slightly in the summer months, but we have significantly dropped since then. And we're expecting that we'll only collect $71 million of rent in December. So again, this is really significant for the authority. Next slide. Cumulative rent collection. So it's important to think about our rent collection when we consider our seasonal trends. So there are months in which we do collect more rent, and we've seen that historically. So if you look at 2019, which is the blue line above, and 2020, which is the green line below, that shows you our cumulative rent collection rate for each year compared to the other. So the rent collection rate in 2020 is worse than the same month in 2019 for every single month. And by November 2020, our rent collection rate was down 6.4% compared to November 2019. And at that point, $78 million cumulatively compared to our collections in 2019. Next slide. So now we'll go into the proposed operating plan. Please keep in mind that all dollars presented are in millions. So this year we undertook a pretty substantial overhaul of our budget process. We started in September by training over 140 property managers on budget concepts and our financial database. In October, the same property manager submitted a request for additional funds directly into the financial plan database. And at the same time, our central office and operations property service departments also submitted requests. In November, the chair and the general manager completed one-on-one budget meetings with our central service departments, and we reviewed all property manager requests with the general manager, and they were all approved for funding. In December, we communicated our preliminary funding decisions, and we allowed departments to allocate the funding provided to them amongst the personnel service categories and the other than personnel service categories. Departments were also allowed to appeal for more funding where they felt the allocation was insufficient. We evaluated those appeals, and those final decisions are what you see today in the proposed budget for board adoption. Next slide. So in 2021, we received $509 million of requests for new needs above our base budget, including 1,300 new staff. We were actually able to approve $311 million of new funding, including 940 new staff. So if you look at the columns across, A is our 2021 base budget. So every year we start with the column of, so in this year, 2021's column of the budget that we approved in 2020 as our base. Column B shows our new requests that come in from the department. C are the approved additions. And what you see in 2021 is the base budget plus the approved additions, A plus C, and you get to our $4 billion number. The pie chart shows you that most of our funding is actually on properties and property services. So together that comprises about 56%. Our leased housing program, so our Section 8 program, is 31%, and our central office departments, about 12%. Next slide. So we were able to unlock $234 million of revenue to support these increased operating expenses. So those sources of revenue are capital fund transfer, our operating reserves, HUD CARES Act funds, which we saved for this fiscal year, proceeds from our RAD PAC transactions, which we need HUD approval for, some small grants for lead, real estate reimbursements. And even after all of that, we're still projecting that we would have a modest $25 million deficit at year end. Next slide. So this slide shows you our proposed sources and uses. Key sources here are operating funds, our central office cost center, Section 8, our small grants, and eliminations are to ensure that we aren't double counting Section 8 in two places. So again, this shows you that we have about $4,058 million of total sources, $4,084 million of total uses, and therefore we're projecting that small, modest $25 million deficit. Next slide. So we are committed to closing the $25 million deficit in 2021. We will closely monitor our spending and we will implement cost-saving measures as necessary. So if we do not get additional federal subsidies or other grant funds, we will come back to the board at mid-year with our options to close our gap. That could include additional funds from our reserves or just slowing down the pace of our spending and new hires. So this shows you our 5-year plan, again, by the sources and uses. Next slide. Our budgeted headcount in 2021 is 11,811 positions. This is an increase of 472 positions from the adopted budget. The top chart shows you by year and budgeted headcount. As you can see, since the new leadership that NYCHA has taken on in 2019, they've made significant increases in our headcount so that we can deal with our operating needs. So if you look at 2018, where we're about 10,684 positions, 2021, we're adopting a budget of 11,811. The bottom chart shows you how that headcount is spread across not only funding source, but key areas of the authority. So the properties, that makes up 6,983 of the 11,000+. Our operations central services, another pretty large chunk across healthy homes, quality assurance, support services, and other operations, Central office follows by department, and last but not least, our Section 8 housing, which is about 416 positions. Next slide. Over the last 3 years, NYCHA has been increasing annual investments to the HUD SDNY agreement pillar areas by $121 million. So if you look at the gray, that shows our adopted budget amount in 2018, and the blue is the proposed budget for 2021. So in each category, we are increasing our investments in these pillar areas. Also, please note that funding for capital needs is also provided in the proposed capital budget. So this does not include elevator replacement or boiler replacement, which would be provided in a capital space. Next slide. NYCHA is investing $19 million to begin the implementation of the transformation plan. In the fourth quarter, most of our skilled trades will be managed directly at the properties, and we're adding 211 more skilled trades for optimal staffing to deal with our work order backlog. 25 positions in the central office will train our new employees, enhance employee engagement, and improve communication with the field. Next slide. Property-based budgeting is another key initiative that's in this budget. So for the first time, as we mentioned, our property managers submitted requests for additional supplies, contracts, equipment, and other OTPS in the discretionary accounts that they manage. All $16 million requested was approved. Please keep in mind that our property managers control about 20% of the property budgets for day-to-day expenses. The remaining 80% is managed centrally. That includes for items like utilities, payroll, property insurance, and other large repairs. Below, the gray shows the base budget. The bright blue is the additional allocation by borough, but again, all of our funds are allocated to individual properties. Next slide. Our 2021 budget supports the lease up of 87,565 units in our Section 8 program, with increases in the out years to support our RAD PAC transactions, as well as the Blueprint for Change. The Section 8 program is very well run, and we're anticipating a modest surplus of about $1 million in 2021. We are also anticipating that we would spend all of the CARES Act funding, which is $33 million that was awarded to us this year. Next slide. Now we'll get into the proposed capital plan section. Next slide. So our 2021 to 2025 proposed capital plan includes $7.4 billion of proposed funds. So the key items here are city capital. City capital, which is $2.9 billion, includes $1.6 billion of the $2.2 billion that was awarded to NYCHA for the HUD SDNY agreement by the city, as well as $1.3 billion of additional mayoral funds. Please keep in mind that unused city funds roll into the next year. On the federal side, our allocation assumes that we would have a continuation of our $585 million annual award. HUD requires us to budget for 5 years, but federal capital funds are only awarded annually. So again, we're just proposing and projecting what we think will happen. On the state side, $414 million is left to be committed for our state heating and elevator pipeline. NYCHA was awarded $450 million total in 2018. And again, the $414 million is what's left to be committed. We have small amounts for FEMA disaster recovery, $143 million, our insurance on our capital projects, $44 million, and other $447 million. Next slide. This shows our proposed capital allocation by funding year and work type. We broke it out into our pretty large categories so you can understand how these proposed funds will be spent by work type. So most of the funds will go to our construction hard costs. This includes heating, plumbing, repairs to our interiors, structure and exteriors, as well as safety and security. So that's $5.4 billion of the $7.4 billion. That's the lion's share. Our construction hard costs, $1.6 billion. And these construction soft costs include our planning fees, our architectural and engineering fees, environmental reviews, and the like. We are also investing $69 million in energy upgrades, $18 million in staffing and program manager costs, $58 million in information technology upgrades across the NYCHA systems, and $247 million of other. Please keep in mind that that other includes our debt service on capital bonds that NYCHA took out in previous years, and that is the lion's share of those funds. So since March, NYCHA has been spending about $74 million on average per month on our capital projects. So that is essentially our burn rate throughout. Next slide. It's important to mention some of our key strategic investments in 2021. So our 2021 plan, we anticipate $64 million to support the replacement of 102 elevators, $17 million to maintain existing local law 11 shedding as required by the city, $224 million to repair 106 roofs, $1 million to upgrade and install new CCTV, intercom, fire alarms, and $883 million to replace boilers NYCHA-wide. Any questions?
Okay, thank you,
Hello?
Anika.
Hello, hello, Board Member Adams. Oh, yes,
Good morning.
Okay, so I looked at, I can't access but I looked at the proposed area from now to 2025. And one of the areas that seems that cost saving measures are going to be made is in the area of overtime. Overtime in itself, since we only have proposed other staff coming in, that's not actually going to be there yet. Especially, we need that money to pay people in the elevator division and heating to keep those services, to monitor our equipment, to keep things going. And it seems like there's going to be a decrease all the way up to 2025, if I read it correctly, that overtime is going to go down, 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 down. I can't access the document and talk to you all at the same time, but that I believe that's what this indicated. Is that true, what I was looking at?
Board Member Adams, that is correct. We're anticipating that as we hire up, our existing staff will do less overtime, but please make no mistake that if ever there's a need for overtime in any of our key pillar areas across the authority, we will have staff performing that overtime until such time that we staff up. So I think that's important to note that we will not, we do anticipate overtime savings as we hire more individuals, but no one will be denied overtime where we need to perform critical repairs for the health and safety of our residents.
Well, I just tend to disagree with it a little bit because that is why the implementation of the AWS hours and stuff was to help but to help absorb some of that overtime cost, especially like as I said with the heating division, that personnel, and the I'm not sure about the elevator division. I haven't spoken to anyone there, but it's with heating, overtime, there should be a budget in a proactive sense instead of reactionary. Why should we wait till something is going on to try to find people or find the money to pay people to come in for it? There should be something set aside for that. That's just my opinion. I mean, there should be a piggy bank to say, hey, we have $34 to pay, and heating is only a seasonal. It's 7 months out of the year. So that money should not be that great just for 7 months, because summertime, the staff is not needed like that. That's just one area. And my next question was the rent impact by rents not being paid because of COVID. I know that the residents are not entitled to the exemption that the state is, given because we live in public housing. So what happens to those people that are not able to pay rents? Are their rents literally just based on zero balance of money coming in, or what happens? So that's the only two questions I have. That's about it for that.
Sure, Greg, I see you with your hands up. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah. First off, and Anika, please correct me. We do budget for overtime.
Correct.
We do have Joe, we do have money in the budget for overtime. We do take it into account based on past practices in a number of areas. So I don't want to have anybody on the board think that we're not thinking about it. We are. And I want to say that part of the rent reduction, yes, there is non-payment associated. However, since March the 12th, when we were counting that as, say, the start of the COVID clock,
Right.
we have processed over 20,000 rent reductions because of impact on people's jobs or other sources of income.
Okay.
And there's about another 1,000 pending as of day before yesterday. So some of the rent reduction is actually due to the ability of the family to come in and say, I lost my job, or I was doing 20 hours a week and now my employer is only giving me 5. So I don't want to give the impression that all of that is due to non-payment. But in any event, whatever the reason, we're bound by the same restrictions that other landlords are. There's no one is currently teed up to lose housing if there's a payment issue. We're going to have to figure out what to do about that. But some of the adjustment that you're seeing in those numbers is legitimate under the rent formula. Now, one open question, and this is kind of why some of the budget I consider that we put together is a little bit in play, is whether HUD and Congress recognize that rents have gone down because of COVID, and whether they choose to act with additional operating subsidy appropriations, because normally it takes about 2 years for us to cycle through a different rent number before Congress is appropriating that money. And one of the things we will do with the other industry groups is ask for that sooner rather than later, because the formula process doesn't give you immediate offset when rents go down. You're expected to collect 97% of the rent when HUD does its formula. And obviously with COVID, not just New York, but other housing authorities not being able to do that. So families are going to be okay. They're not, there's not going to be we're going to have to think about what we do going forward. We're probably going to have to come back, I'd say, first quarter of next year with some kind of proposal to the board to address how we see the rent reductions, but also if there are delinquencies, what are we going to do about that? Those are two comments I wanted to make on the overtime. It is there is a budget number in there, and then we are processing legitimate rent reductions, and that's part of the reason rents are down.
Okay, so Greg, just back to the overtime. Thank you for clarifying the rent.
Sure.
Situation. Overtime is like the carrot that leads the horse out of the barn. As a former city employee, I'm just and the
no, it's all right. I like the analogy.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to make it simple for myself more so. But there's been times when I've gotten up or stayed up too late to socialize, and I say, "Damn, you know what? I got overtime today." The overtime it's cause and effect. It affects people's disposition in attendance, also economically, because residents, us, and the people that work here with, we're linked socially and economically. So we have the same needs, the same concerns. In my 20-some years, I've heard people complain about supervisors, people they work with, equipment, but they have never complained about being able to make a few extra dollars when they can come in and they know they have 3 or 4 hours to look forward to. I believe this is going to be key. I'm not sure what the overtime budget is, but seeing that number go down, then hopefully we will have what she stated, have people coming in. And just to add that, is an agency like NYCHA, are they allowed to do job fairs to get young people from college or other areas to come in to the agency and work at various positions as a second choice? I'm quite sure a lot of people in college have first choice, but as a a second option? Are you allowed to hire like that as well? Or it has to stay in-house for the most part? So I'm
Well,
just-
no, recruitment is, we do have recruitment process for a lot of the positions. I mean, sometimes, depending on the position, it's easier, sometimes it's harder, but it often depends on the job market and our ability to, but we do recruit. And for entry level, especially, we want to recruit residents and especially for the entry level type jobs. But there are other steps that HR takes when they're looking to fill positions across all the lines.
Okay.
Just
All
to
right.
that point on the, I think it's important to clarify that the AWS schedule was never meant to get rid of overtime, but reduce it. And through NYCHA hiring over 200 additional caretakers, and 50% of those hires being NYCHA residents, we certainly have been investing in both our resident workforce and the caretaker staff to see those reductions in overtime. I think it's also important to mention that many city agencies, are considering layoffs and other cost-cutting measures. And at this time, NYCHA has actually been able to increase our spending and increase our headcount. So, taken against comparable agencies, I think it's important to point that out as well.
Well, from a city standpoint, we're an agency that are constantly putting out fires. So we do get a little bit of leeway, from my understanding, with the actual layoff situation. As far as the AWS hours, that's more of a general consensus because that was always in the contract. I believe the implementation of it could, in my opinion, could have been waited a little bit longer. And for the most part, out of the maybe 35 or 40 people I have ran into and spoke to, they have a different perspective on it. And I'll just leave it at that. Okay, I understand that it was in the contract, it was used, but it just maybe the timing with the COVID and the holidays and stuff. And, people have time and vacation and sick time, and they feel, they don't have that little extra added incentive to look forward to. It's a cause and effect thing. That's it. And I'm done with my questions. Thank you.
This is Paula. I just wanted to compliment the process of including the property managers. I think that was just an amazing first step of what I know will become part of our culture. But I just want to compliment because I also know how much work that is and what it takes. So I think we have both a good capital and an operating budget given all the challenges. So thank you all for that.
We appreciate that. Thank you so much, Board Member Gavin.
One question. I don't know how to phrase it. I know what I want to say in my head, but I'm not quite sure how it should be asked. But I'm trying to see the correlation with the how to lower the overtime in connection with putting up programs that are supposed to help us with that, such as the AWS that Board Member Adams brought up, and then looking at how the dynamics of those programs, and then hiring out, work to others outside of the agency of work that we can do in the sense of saving money. So how does that all correlate in the numbers? I mean, how do you, I know the question sounds a little crazy, but it's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts that are addressing numbers as to the people that we hire out, that we hire to do jobs that we can do is supposed to be savings because it will cost us less in the overtime that our people would do, or supplement the fact that we don't have enough people to do it. So all of that taken into consideration when you're calculating these numbers?
So if I can, so your question is more art than science, I would say. I can share how, and Vito and I talk about this constantly, but I can share some of our thoughts. First, we're trying to make sure we have enough staff to be responsive in the compliance areas that we signed on to for this agreement. And that means, and I think that in this is a stretch budget in my view. We've really stretched ourselves to accommodate that demand. And that's some fundamental things. That's heat, that's elevators, that's mold and pests and so forth. So I would say, Victor, that one of the things that we think about is, do we have enough resources, whether that's an employee that we're carrying, and I don't mean that in a negative way, that they come with benefits and so forth that we're required to pay, and we have the contractors. And we try to match those two things up inside our spending so that we're carrying enough workforce to respond ourselves when we need to, and also enough contractors to do the work that comes along. So some of the contracts that are coming up later in the agenda on things like inspections and so forth, it's easier for us to do that and get that information, but we may wind up repairing that with a crew that's our workforce. So that's one way these two things kind of fit together. The other thing I'll say, and this gets back to the rate at which we're spending a significant amount of money on repairs because we have stuff that's old. When Steve Lovesey gets his state money for boilers cooking and starts actually replacing them, any capital work that we do to modernize the system is going to have immediate impact on things like personnel, overtime, and allocations, because that boiler is not going to need the attention that the 70-year-old boiler or the 50-year-old boiler needs. And it's going to come with electronic controls. It's going to come with more modern features. So if we're successful in capital investment over time, we will cut the work tickets and demand. And the money that was spent on servicing the old equipment, we believe long-term can be moved to do better things that are more day-to-day. Right now, there's a lot of tension in the budget between fixing, repairing, and maintaining old systems versus being able to do the kinds of things that you normally associate with property that's in a better condition. So I don't know if that gets to your question, but those things are played out in this budget. And I'll say one other thing. I want to compliment the staff, especially the budget staff and our CFO and her staff, because I want to say that early on, the general manager and myself agreed that we were going to make our budget decisions together and do that in a way that was across the whole portfolio. And I think his team as well was incredibly responsive as we worked through this. And it was a great pleasure to do this budget. It's a complicated budget, but it is reflecting the need for capital repair. It is reflecting resources to address compliance, and it is reflecting both staffing and contracting balance that we try each year to maintain, so we have the troops available to respond if we need them.
Well, it kind of addressed it, and thank you for that somewhat. But please understand.
I understand. Yeah.
Please understand that I understand that this is a massive undertaking for everyone involved. You, the general manager, the CFO, and all the people that are working hard to get it right. I understand that, and I want to congratulate you all in such a great job. But again, it's a massive undertaking, and there are things that'll, shall we say, slip through the cracks. And if we don't address them, then all this good work that's being done will be for naught. And that is my concern as why I was asking those particular questions, that particular question. And it'll be even clearer when we speak. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Victor.
Thank you. Anika will now proceed with the calendared items, the 32 items. Anika, items 1 and 2, please.
Oh, okay. Item 1 is authorization to approve the authority's 5-year capital budget plan for calendar years 2021 through 2025. Thank you. Item 2 is authorization to approve the authority's 5-year operating budget plan for calendar years 2021 and 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Anika. Item 3, Jeffrey. Mr. Lesnoy.
Good morning, board members. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
My name is Jeffrey Lesnoy. As Controller of New York City Housing Authority, authorization is requested to approve the issuance of the authority's single audit report for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2019. The Single Audit Act of 1984 and its amendments entitled 2 U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, Part 200, Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles, and Audit Requirements for Federal Awards, require that all recipients of federal financial assistance of $750,000 or more publish within 9 months of the close of each fiscal year a complete set of financial statements presented in conformity with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, and audited under governmental auditing standards by independent certified public accountants. In response to the COVID-19 crisis, Office of Management and Budget issued Memorandum M20-26, which provided for a 3-month extension to December 31st, 2020. This audit was conducted by Deloitte & Touche LLP for the purpose of forming an opinion on the financial statements and to issue the single audit report in accordance with the Single Audit Act. The single audit report for the year ended December 31st, 2019 consists of the following reports, schedules, and opinions. First, audited annual financial statements, which were approved by the Board Resolution 20-9/30-9. And for this, Deloitte issued an unmodified opinion, concluding that the financial statements were a fair representation of the authority's financial condition. Required supplemental information and financial data schedules are included within. Independent auditor's report on internal control of financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit of the financial statements performed. And for this, Deloitte did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control of financial reporting. In addition, it should be noted that Deloitte's testing did not identify any instances of non-compliance. In addition to that, there was an independent auditor's report on compliance for each major federal program, report on internal control over compliance, and report on schedule of expenditures of federal awards required by the uniform guidance. And for all of these, Deloitte expressed its opinion that the authority complied in all material respects with compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major federal programs. In addition, Deloitte did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control over compliance. And lastly, they expressed their opinion that the schedule expenditures of federal awards is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the financial statements as a whole. Lastly, the report included the schedule of findings and question costs in addition to prior year's findings. And it's important to note that Deloitte did not identify any findings in 2019 and that only minor deficiencies were identified in 2018, which were fully remediated within 2019. So we have no open deficiencies at this point in time. On September 17, 2020, I, on behalf of our Chief Financial Officer, Nicholas Scott, presented a draft of the authority's financial statements for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2019 to the authority's Audit Committee. Pursuant to Board Resolution 2020-9/30-9. The board approved the issuance of these audited financial statements. Subsequently, on December 15th, 2020, Deloitte presented the draft of the 2019 single audit report to the authority's audit committee. Based on all these presentations, the authority's audit committee recommended board approval for the issuance of the fiscal year 2019 single audit report in compliance with the audit committee charter adopted pursuant to board resolution 03-6/18-18 and with subsequent amendments, of which the most recent is by board resolution 13-9/25-6. Therefore, as controller, I am requesting that the board approve such board resolution and permit the issuance of the 2019 single audit report in accordance with the authority's bylaws, delegation record, and other applicable authority procedures and documents pursuant to the foregoing terms of this board resolution, and such other terms and conditions as the general counsel or the general counsel's designee deems appropriate. And with that, that ends my presentation. I'll ask for if there are any questions.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
We'll proceed with items 4 and 5. Anne Marie.
Good morning. I am Anne Marie Flatley, the Senior Vice President for Performance Management and Analytics. This resolution seeks authorization to submit an amendment to the authority's fiscal year 2020 annual PHA plan. The amendment to the 2020 plan includes the following. 1, the fiscal year 2020 Capital Fund Annual Statement, Performance and Evaluation Report, and the 5-year capital plan. 2, the request to HUD to obtain the necessary approval to release the Belmont Sutter area, Fiorentino Plaza, and Pennsylvania Avenue, Wortman Avenue developments from the declaration of restricted covenants in order to retain the developments outside of the federal public housing program and convert the units from a Section 9 public housing annual contributions contract to a Section 8 project-based voucher housing assistant payment contract pursuant to federal regulations and/or the provisions prescribed by HUD through the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, and add them to the developments previously approved permanently affordability commitment together program conversions. And this resolution also seeks authorization to submit the certification of compliance with the PHA plans and related regulations to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in accordance with Section 511 of the Quality Housing and Work Responsibility Act of 1998. The certification that will be executed includes 3 notations, which I would like to state for the record. Notation 1. Currently, NYCHA is not in compliance with the number of federal regulations and is working to assess the extent of noncompliance. On January 31, 2019, NYCHA and the Secretary of HUD signed an agreement to address a finding by the Secretary of a substantial default by NYCHA and to resolve claims brought by the United States. The agreement established a framework by which NYCHA will continue to evaluate and progress towards compliance with federal requirements. Please see the final fiscal year 2021 annual PHA plan for information on the progress made to date towards compliance with federal requirements. An independent monitor is in place with access to NYCHA information and personnel and has issued and will continue to issue quarterly reports on NYCHA's compliance with the agreement. Additionally, on January 31st and July 31st, 2020, NYCHA submitted reports pursuant to HUD Agreement Exhibit A, Paragraph 30B, on compliance efforts and compliance shortfalls with the Lead Safe Housing Rule and EPA-led regulations. Notation number 2. In 2020, NYCHA Compliance, in coordination with other NYCHA departments, conducted a review of NYCHA's compliance with certain HUD regulations pertaining to Section 504. NYCHA Compliance identified compliance process gaps and is working with relevant NYCHA departments to remedy those gaps and assess the extent of any noncompliance. Notation number 3. In 2019, NYCHA reported that it is not in compliance with the obligation to provide the required timely submission of data to HUD's 558 PIC IMS module. NYCHA continues monitoring the timeliness of its submissions and working towards compliance with the applicable requirements. For the past year, submission rates have ranged from 91% to 93%, with the exception of July 31st, 2020, when the submission rate was 81%. NYCHA has corrected the IT issue that caused this lower reporting rate. This signed certification, along with a final amendment and board resolution, will be electronically submitted to HUD's field office by January 16th, 2021. And with that, I would open it up to questions.
Okay, there are no questions. Thank you, Anne Marie.
Okay, so item number 5. This resolution seeks authorization to submit the authority's fiscal year 2021 annual PHA plan. The annual plan includes the following additions for 2021. The flat rent schedule for 2021, new packed RAD sites, including Reed Apartments and Park Rock Consolidated, the Fred Samuel City Development, Claremont Consolidated, Union Avenue Consolidated, and Edenwald, as well as the transfer of development rights at Manhattanville and Campos Plaza 2 for affordable housing development. This resolution also seeks authorization to submit the certification of compliance with the PHA plans and related regulations to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in accordance with Section 511 of the Quality Housing and Work Responsibility Act of 1998. The certification that will be executed includes the same 3 notations which were previously just stated for item number 4. This signed certification, along with the final annual plan and board resolution, will be electronically submitted to HUD's field office by January 16th, 2021. And with that, I open it to questions.
Thank you. There are no questions. Thank you, Anne Marie.
Okay, thanks.
We will proceed with item 6. Sergio.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Good morning, board members. I'm Sergio Paneke, NYCHA's Chief Procurement Officer. I'm presenting this item 6 on behalf of the Office of Supply Management and Procurement. Authorization is requested for a $1,347,765 funding increase to NYCHA's March 2020 agreement with Guidehouse LLP for consulting services. This agreement, which did not require initial board authorization due to its $1 million threshold, was procured by NYCHA's Office of Strategy and Innovation, piggybacking on an agreement with Guidehouse held by the New York State Division of the Budget. NYCHA's agreement is awarded was for services necessary to meet NYCHA's commitment to assess, review, transform its management and operations as required by NYCHA's January 2019 agreement with HUD. The purpose of this funding is to increase and build on the previously completed work, including the procurement policy manual, and support the implementation of procurement-related strategies in the authority's transformation plan. The transformation plan calls for an improved procurement function through organizational restructuring of procurement into cross-functional teams, improve and streamline the procurement process, create annual procurement forecasting plans, operationalize the use of data to employ more strategic sourcing activities, including inventory management, and develop a centralized vendor engagement and management strategy. Guidehouse's work for this procurement will consist of 4 major deliverables in support of the procurement transformation. They are project management and mobilization, deep dive procurement and inventory assessments, procurement transformation plan implementation support, and development and support of an innovative procurement pilot. Guidehouse will invoice NYCHA on an hourly basis pursuant to rates existing in NYCHA's underlying agreement with them, up to a maximum as requested in this authorization. These deliverables are anticipated to take approximately 8 months. Are there any questions?
Questions? Thank you, Sergio.
Thank you, everyone.
We will proceed with items 7 and 8. Patty.
Morning, everyone. My name is Patty Bayros, and I'm the CIO at the New York City Housing Authority. Thanks so much for your time today. I will be presenting items 7 and 8 for your consideration, both of which pertain to our use of Oracle-based systems. Item 7 is a request for approval to enter into an agreement with Mythix Incorporated, a software reseller of Oracle software products, for a contract term of 1 year beginning on 12/31/2020 for an amount not to exceed $1,438,935. NYCHA's IT team manages and supports many business critical applications such as Siebel, Maximo, Oracle Financials, and our data warehouse, all of which have some Oracle components for which we require software license maintenance. This agreement provides for Oracle software maintenance It is critical for NYCHA to maintain products with the recommended support level and to provide support to business applications and databases that utilize Oracle products. Are there any questions?
Patty, good morning.
Good morning.
We discussed this issue over the last couple of months with Oracle, and you sent me the report showing on, like I said, on the right side in red, all of the outages and information, and on the left side, the minimal impact. Then we had discussions on how the services are somewhat directed to those kiosks that the residents had been using. And we had a lot of dialogue. Maybe I misunderstood you, but I know that those objects cannot be removed. It wouldn't be feasible. But I was under the understanding that would possibly be, especially because of COVID, there would be some assistance with those using those units, maybe even some partitions put up. There's no privacy, it's wide open. We went back and forth, and I believe I sent you an email 3 weeks ago for some more dialogue. Because initially we had a lot of dialogue, and it just seemed, you were busy, it just seemed to stop. And this morning I called in an elevator situation, and her system shut down for about 10 minutes. And the only reason I switched from her, I said, because she knows me, I said, look, I'll hang on. She said, okay, Mr. Adams. And and there are issues with Oracle and their services. You showed that in your report, but you stated it was minimal. But for a person getting up trying to call for help in the morning, maybe a cold apartment, water's running, for that to happen, that is a humanistic issue again, and that is just a major inconvenience. It just seems that there's a continuous issue with the services that this provider has been giving us, and that is my opinion.
Thank you, Board Member Adams. I'd like to address a few of your points. I do apologize for not sending you an email response immediately. I've been talking to the general manager about making sure that we can address all the different points that you made. I know we've addressed some of them in a couple of our conversations, but you're right. I definitely do need to get back to you to address all of your questions, and I apologize. That said, in terms of the kiosks, we are working closely with the Dynatouch vendor because the kiosk performance is about more than just the Oracle Siebel system that is displayed on the kiosks. There are hardware considerations. The partitions for privacy is certainly something we've raised with them. Sylvia and Audi and I recently had a call with them, and they are getting back to us with some options that we can consider to address privacy concerns that are very understandable. So we are addressing that. In terms of having additional support, we have arranged for digital vans to be have a stronger presence, especially in areas that have a higher number of people working on recertifications. In terms of having people on site to help navigate the kiosks, I did discuss that with the general manager, and we understand that that's a request, and we will circle back to you on that. In terms of the performance of the Oracle systems, you're right. There are some issues periodically with Siebel. I'm glad you pointed out your issue this morning, and certainly we'll have someone look into that and reach out to the CCC to determine what transpired. It is not necessarily always a factor of the Oracle software itself. There are a lot of factors at hand. So it's not necessarily the vendor providing just poor service. Sometimes it's a variety of other factors that the CCC may be experiencing, but we'll certainly look into this specific example and make sure that we can get back to you. I do understand your concerns, and we have been working hard to improve performance, specifically around the Siebel application, which does have an Oracle backend. I'm happy to address specific incidents and issues as they are occurring. But I do think we still require this maintenance to continue to improve our performance around these systems.
Yes, and I'm sorry, this is Vito. If I just may jump in, Board Member I believe we already have a meeting on the calendar for next week, where we will address a number of issues that you've raised, both in some of our departments, such as heating and elevators, as well as in IT. So we will take that opportunity next week to discuss that further with you. And as Patty mentioned, excuse me, and to address some of the concerns, especially with respect to COVID and being able to provide for adequate environments for folks to have access to our systems. We've retrofitted some of our vehicles, including the digital van, and we've rolled it out, and we've actually used it at a number of our developments, and it's been extremely helpful. So we're open to hearing your thoughts, your concerns. I think we've already made a number of improvements in how we can better deliver services, but certainly we'll discuss it further next week.
Well, Vito, thank you for that. But for the sake and purposes of the meeting today, I've had the discussions with Ms. Bayross. We've been ongoing for months. And she sat here and she told us, and the report stated there's issues on the right side of the report and a minimization on the left side of the report. And I have no more questions about this. Or I just don't have any more questions about this. So I just don't.
No, I understand. And look, honestly, she did mention to me that she had a response that she owed you, and I felt that it would be better for us to have a conversation first. So why don't we just again spend the time next week? All right, we'll go over all of the issues that you've raised.
Well, they've been raised already. Like I just stated, we went over this more than a few months ago. There was very proactive conversation, and being at that time, Ms. Bayross was very diligent in trying to get what she's doing, what you're talking about doing now. And that just seemed to cease. And I had told her, I said, just based on your diligence in responding and trying to address the issue, that this is something that I definitely was in favor of. Just, hey, my support is here for this. Today we're here, we're having a different meeting, and basically I'm basically hearing the same extension of what might happen. So in all fairness to me, I've traveled this road with this issue and this particular vendor. And that's what I can say.
Okay, Member Adams, thank you for your comments. We'll proceed.
Madam Sec, is she finished?
Yes, Member Adams?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Has she finished the presentation on this?
She's finished the presentation on item 7, yes.
I'm abstaining my vote on item 7.
You're abstaining?
Item 7, yes.
That's noted. Thank you. Patty, you may proceed with item 8.
Thank you. Authorization is requested to approve funding and execution of the additional 2 years for the agreement with Baez Corporation for professional services to provide on-site and remote desktop database support and application administration services for various Oracle-based systems. The original board resolution authorized a 3-year term with 2 one-year renewal options. We'd like to exercise our 2 renewal options and thus continue the contract through its term until February 28th, 2023. The 2 additional years will provide necessary support and administration for business critical applications, Oracle databases, and the associated hardware administration. Since 2018, the maintenance support of Siebel, Maximo, Oracle Financials, and other solutions has grown, and additional resources are required to manage application and database administration load. The current team is managing these responsibilities in addition to the day-to-day application security tasks. Baez provides additional resources to cover the extra workload required for various deployments, project work, migrations, upgrades, and lights-on support for these critical business applications. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Patty.
Madam Secretary, yes.
Yes, Member Adams.
I'm abstaining my vote on item 8 as well.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you. Thank you very much, Patty. We will.
Madam Secretary, it's the
Yes,
chair. I
Chair.
wanted to ask Patty a couple of questions. Aren't these maintenance agreements that we're dealing with?
They are. Well, the first item is maintenance on the Oracle software solutions that are the basis through our Oracle systems, our Maximo, the Siebel systems, the base systems run on Oracle software. So these are software maintenance agreements. They don't include, for example, the Verizon connectivity that board member Adams and I have discussed that actually allows for support of like the CCC to run them, but this specific item is for the software maintenance. Item 8 is for professional services that adds to our staff in order to maintain the products and the specific NYCHA implementation. So they go together, but one is for software and one is for professional services.
Okay, and then with respect to, basically this is to make sure that the software keeps its functionality.
Yeah,
And,
so that it allows us to get support from the vendor. It allows us to get new versions of the software. So the core database, so for example, we recently upgraded all of our backend databases to a version called Oracle 12c. That is the current version. So it allows us to patch our systems with security improvements. It allows us to stay current and to allow for the protection of our systems and to leverage new functionality that the vendors provide in new versions of the software. It doesn't necessarily change the NYCHA implementation of it. It just allows us to leverage the base products.
So one way to think about this is we're maintaining the software, but it's not going to change a business process step necessarily.
Right. Well, item 7 is the maintaining of the software. Item 8 would be, for example, if we're going to improve a screen or add a new report.
I see. Okay.
Or do something. That's professional services.
All right. Thank you.
Greg?
Yeah.
How it was initially explained to me is that Oracle is the big brother that holds the hand of the rest of these supporting services, which are not functioning that well. They're just not. Her report indicated that we had the discussions and the big brother Oracle has let go of the hand of the rest of the supporting services like Verizon and other ones. And then that's not functioning that well, especially in areas of the call center and other areas that we discussed. And after that, I have just no more to say on it. I really don't.
Okay. No, we can talk about it further, Joe, but I just wanted to understand myself what the contracts were about. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Chair. We'll proceed with item 9. Carrie.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Carrie Jew, Executive Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer of the New York City Housing Authority. This afternoon, I'm presenting Board Resolution number 9. With this resolution, I'm seeking authorization to enter into an agreement with Language Services Associates, Inc. for over-the-phone foreign language interpretation services. NYCHA's agreement will commence on February 8th, 2021 for an initial 3-year term with 2 one-year renewal options to be renewed automatically at NYCHA's sole discretion. The not-to-exceed amount of this contract is $5,070,000. This agreement was piggybacked off of a New York State Office of General Services contract, which commenced on October 25th, 2017, and which expires on October 24th, 2022. NYCHA is mandated by HUD and New York City to provide this service so that individuals with limited English proficiency may access essential and/or emergency services provided by the authority. To this end, Language Services will provide NYCHA with on-demand, over-the-phone foreign language interpretation services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days per year. Just to give you some context, NYCHA's monthly call volume ranges from 12,000 to 20,000 calls, and the average call length is approximately 8 minutes. The average over-the-phone foreign language interpretation services connect time will be 18 seconds or less. These services will be used in NYCHA's call center, walk-in centers at every NYCHA development and each of NYCHA's borough offices. Therefore, I am requesting your approval to fund the provision of services with Language Services Associates for 3 years with 2 renewal options for a total of $5,070,000. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Carrie.
Thank you and Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year too. Items 10 and 11, Razul.
Good morning. My name is Rasul Adanjat. I'm the Vice President for Healthy Home. Item 10 and 11, authorization requested to ratify the award of 2 IDIQ contract for lead-based paint visual assessment services in dwelling and building interior common area. One of the IDIQ contract is between Authority and M&M Pets Control Incorporated, DBA M&M Environmental. And the other IDIQ is between Authority and ATC Group Services, LLC. As I said, this is for lead-based paint visual assessment, which is required by HUD regulation and local law 1 of 2004. Every year, we're supposed to inspect these dwelling unit and interior of the building for lead-based paint, if we know there is a lead-based paint or presume to have lead-based paint. These are 2 years contract with a 1 year option at sole discretion of Authority. The minimum requirement for this contract is $250,000 and the maximum is $2 million. VNC on these vendors are checked and they're okay. M&M, we did not have any past experience with M&M, but we had experience with ATC. They have done over $5 million worth of work for us in the past. Any question?
Yes, I have one.
Yes.
You have section 3 on 10, but you don't have section 3 on 11. And if you're doing the same work, you intend on using the 5 section 3 from 10 on 11?
Well, ATC basically told us zero projection on section 3. Again, these are an inspection which is only required to have certified visual assessment HUD training course, and at this point, ATC has indicated on section 3 there is zero projection height.
I see. So they can opt out for doing the section 3, but M&M Pest Control cannot?
Well, it depends. I mean, these are what they told us on their proposal. I mean, ATC, it depends on who they use for an inspection. If they use certified people, then ATC, as I said, has done a lot of work in the past, and they have a lot of certified people who do this type of work. But M&M is the new vendor to us, and they indicated on their contract that they're going to hire section 3.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no additional questions. Thank you, Razul.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
Happy New Year.
We'll now proceed to items 12 through 24. Joe?
Yes, good morning, and we can start off by wishing everyone a Happy New Year, just in case the meeting ends quickly. Again, items 12 through 24, items 12 through 15 are seeking authorization to award contracts. Item 12 is for a requirement contract with Omega Industries Incorporated. This is a 2-year requirement contract with a 1-year renewal option. It provides for staff for preparatory and training classes for DOB elevator inspection, agency director license, or elevator inspector license. The scope of work includes, but it's not limited to, providing preparatory training classes to approximately 75 authority elevator staff to obtain an elevator inspection agency director license or, as stated, elevator inspector license in order for staff to inspect and clear DOB issued violations and noted deficiencies. This is in the amount of $194,400 for this training. Item.
Just one thing, Joe. All this great work that's going, Mr. Cortin, all this great work that's going on, and I won't be a beneficiary for it. We just converted. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Item number 13 is a requirement contract for the rental and servicing of emergency diesel generators with Cooper Friedman Electric Supply Company Incorporated, DBA Cooper Electric Supply Company. There's a 2-year requirement contract with 3 one-year renewal options. And it's for all equipment servicing and a rental of diesel generators, about 21 size 3-phase 208-volt trailer-mounted diesel generators, which are, when necessary, capable of running in parallel and synced, along with all related components and cables to supply electric power to authority residential and non-residential buildings on an as-needed basis. This is for various developments citywide in the amount of $25,508,434.83, and with 2 projected Section 3 hires. Items 14 and 15 are seeking authorization to award 2 IDIQ contracts with Richards Plumbing and Heating Company Incorporated for gas piping inspections. These are contracts with the 1-year renewal, 4-year contracts, with 1-year renewal options. And item number 14 is in the amount of $1,250,000 with 1 projected Section 3 hiring, various developments citywide. Item 15 is with $1,250,000 with 1 Section 3 hire as well.
Joe?
Yes, sir.
Adams, thank you for sending me the information regarding this particular item. It was all all updated and in place. Thank you very much.
Well, I'd like to thank Procurement and Emergency Services for providing that information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 16 is seeking to ratify and entering into an emergency agreement with Marek Mechanical Incorporated for temporary boiler rentals and maintenance, which commenced October 5th, 2020, continuing on through October 4th of 2022, excuse me. And this is for to furnish all labor, materials, equipment, insurance, and incidentals required for temporary boiler rentals and maintenance, and 2 Scotch Marine gas-fired boilers. This is at East River Houses, 1 projected Section 3 hire in the amount of $1,150,457.47. Items 17 through 24 are seeking funding increases. Item 17 is a requirement contract with TR Pipe Incorporated for replacement of motorized steam control zone valve stations and heating control panels. For a contract term of July 30th, 2019 through July 29th of 2022. It's various Brooklyn developments in the amount of $5,336,508.92 with 1 projected Section 3 hire.
Joe, thank you on that particular item, what you sent me the information. It was clear and concise and up to date. Thank you again.
Okay, I'd like to thank Procurement for that. Thank you. Items number 18 is also a funding increase to requirement contract with TR Pipe Incorporated for replacement of motorized steam control zone valve stations and heating control panels. This is July 30th, 2019 through July 29th of 2022. This is for various Bronx developments in the amount of $3,357,115.09 with one projected Section 3 hire. Items 19, 20, and 21 are requirement contracts awarded to Dirty Gloves Drain Services LLC for sewer rotting with water jetting, including closed circuit television camera inspections. And this is 19 is a contract term May 11th, 2020 through May 10th of 2021. Various Manhattan developments in the amount of $44,191. Item 20 is in the amount of $64,260. And this is for various developments, NGO properties, also for the same contract term, May 11th, 2020 through May 10th, 2021. And likewise, item 21, the same contract period, in the amount of $48,193. And this is for Queens, Staten Island. Item 22 is seeking approval for funding increase to RJ Bruno Incorporated for labor-only plumbing services on low-pressure boilers and associated plumbing fixtures in boiler rooms. It's a contract commencing February 28th, 2019, continuing on through February 27th of 2022, in the amount of $186,070.06. It's for various Manhattan developments. Excuse me. Item 23 is a contract with Power Mechanical Incorporated for rental of mobile boilers, heat exchangers, and mobile oil tanks. This is a contract term of December 16th, 2019 through December 15th of 2022, in the amount of $6,271,437.85 with various developments citywide. Excuse me. Item 24 is a contract with Claddagh Controls Corporation for purchase and delivery of elevator parts. And the contract term is July 20th, 2018 through July 19th, 2021. It's various developments citywide in Long Island City Warehouse in the amount of $151,629.83. There are no questions. Thank you very much. And as I said, Happy New Year.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you, Vilma, for sitting in for me. Items 25 through 31. Steve?
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Lovesey, and I'm the EVP of Capital Projects Division. Capital provides 2 reports to the board. These were provided to the board and will be made part of the board records. In the interest of time, I will move on to our first board item, number 25.
Right, Steve, can I just, the reports have already been provided to the board. They've had a chance to review it. So if the board members have any questions with respect to these 2 reports, you will answer them now. Are there any questions? No. Okay, Steve.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Board item number 25, Capital Projects Division seeks authorization to award this contract to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, DDS Mechanical Plumbing and Heating Corporation, for gas pipe replacement at Pominock Houses in the amount of $7,419,034. DDS understands the scope of the work and has the capacity to perform this work to satisfactory. There was a vendor name check dated November 6, 2020, which was vetted by the Vendor Integrity and Supply Diversity Department, which found no issue to preclude the award. The contract provides gas piping replacement at 31 of the 35 buildings at Paminack. The remaining buildings were already addressed in a previous requirements contract. This contract is 9.05% below our cost estimate, and the contractor will provide 3 Section 3 hires. If there are no further questions, I will move on to board item number 26. Board item number, excuse me?
No, proceed, Steve, sorry.
Thank you. Capital Projects Division seeks authorization to ratify the funding increase to the agreement with D&B Engineers and Architects for professional construction management as agent services. This is part of the Recovery and Resiliency Program for an amount of $732,000. I'm sorry, $732,019.99. D&B is providing CMA services for 3 developments as part of the Recovery and Resiliency: Carlton Manor, Hamel Houses, and Redfern. This increase is for Redfern Houses. The funding increase is number 7 as part of their contract. The program and the duration of the project has been extended, and so we need the construction and management services to be extended as well. The increase in the agreement, as I mentioned, was the amount for $732,019.99. This increases their overall award amount to $22,371,221.09. This is a ratification. If there are no questions on board item number 26, I will move on to board items number 27 through 31. Capital Projects seeks authorization to ratify 5 change orders to the contract with Roma Scaffolding, Inc. This is for roof replacement and rooftop structure renovation at Eastchester Gardens in the total amount of $123,000, $123,500. Excuse me, I'll say that again, $123,500. These change orders are being presented to the board because their cumulative value together with the previous change order on the contract exceeds the 10% of the original contract value. We moved this pipeline over from the city funded to the federal during the funding moratorium, and these ratifications are regarding the work that was done. Change order, item number 27, which is change order number 2. There was a need to relocate and reinstall an exhaust fan. To prevent delay, we moved forward on this part of the project for the roofing. This item is for $13,500. Item number 28, change order number 3. This was for modifications to an existing chain link fence at the main roof of building number 10. The dollar amount negotiated was $13,500. For item number 29, which was our change order number 4, due to the increase in the R value or the thickness of the roofing structure causes a problem at the bulkheads, we needed to increase the depth of the 24-inch step inside the bulkhead doors for Department of Buildings. This dollar amount was for $39,000. Item number 30, or our change order number 5. As we were doing work on the rooftop, we noticed that the existing windowsills had severely deteriorated at the bulkhead, and the slate stone sills, metal flashing, and sealant needed to be repaired and reinstalled, removed and reinstalled with new. That dollar amount is for $36,500. And the remaining item, item number 31, our change order number 6, was that there was an existing electrical junction box located on the main roof bulkheads that needed to be relocated because it interfered with the extension of the railing due to the height of the new roofing. The dollar amount for that change order was $21,000. So in total, Board item number 27 was 13,500. Board item number 28 was 13,500. Board item 29 was 39,000. Board item 30 was 36,500. Board item 31 was 21,000, for a revised total amount of $21,420,546.28. If there are no questions to those ratified change orders, that concludes Capital Projects Division's board items for this month.
Thank you very much.
Steve, I'm sorry. Steve?
Okay.
Yes, Board Member Adams.
Thanks for sending me the Sandy visual stuff from LaGuardia. That was the other diagram, Steve, the one that looks like the Pentagon. I could not decipher that. You got 3D or something, or the other diagram, not the one with the people putting up the walls for the water and stuff. The other diagram, the second one.
Okay.
If you have something a little bit more, easier for me to, just look at. But I appreciate you sending them. Thank you. That work at LaGuardia looks very extensive, and I know it's necessary. But the other one, I just couldn't figure out what was going left or right. That's all. Thanks.
Understood. If we can get some photos of the actual installation, we will provide that to you, and I can off of this board meeting, we can correspond through the corporate secretary.
Sure, fine. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. And for the record, the CPD's Weatherization Assistance Program, or otherwise known as WAP, related contracts and change orders, and CPD's capital spend report for November of 2020 are officially added to and made a part of this meeting's record. And we'll proceed to item 32. Jillian?
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Jillian Connell, Managing Director of Business Operations for the Real Estate Development Department. And today I'm presenting item number 32, which is requesting authorization to enter into an agreement with Dominion Due Diligence Group for the provision of due diligence services that NYCHA requires in connection with PACT, the RAD program, Section 18, as well as the potential lease of NYCHA property for the purpose of new development, the rehabilitation of existing NYCHA buildings, and the transfer of air rights. The due diligence services include the preparation of capital needs assessments, the preparation of obsolescence assessments, and utility analysis. Dominion was selected for award of this agreement pursuant to an RFP issued on March 30th, 2020, with proposals due on May 6th, 2020. 16 vendors submitted proposals, which were reviewed by the RFP Evaluation Committee. The Evaluation Committee reviewed and evaluated the proposals based on the following 4 criteria: experience and qualifications, methodology, cost proposal, and the hiring plan. Based on the ratings of the proposals by the RFP Evaluation Committee, the Real Estate Development Department recommends that the authority enter into an agreement for the provision of due diligence services with Dominion Due Diligence. The term of the agreement is anticipated to be 5 years, commencing in January 2021 and continuing through December 2025, which includes an initial 3-year term and 2 1-year renewal options that would be renewed automatically. And the agreement value will be $1,997,900. Happy to take any questions that you have about this request.
I just have one, and you must pardon my, I guess, non-familiarity, but what, can you give me an example of an obsolescence assessment?
Sure. So the obsolescence assessment is looking at, it takes a look at the total value of the capital need that's required for the site, and then determining the cost estimate and whether or not the cost estimate is sort of beyond what would be considered a viable repair.
Hey, Victor, it's Greg.
Yes.
I'm sorry, this is a HUD term. And HUD uses these benchmarks when they evaluate applications for the disposition of public housing. And they created this concept, and they have a threshold in their mind that they use to consider these kinds of applications, and this company would help us determine if we're at or near or over that threshold.
I see. So they're actually assessing the total value, not only with cost versus our estimates, or?
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason HUD does this is the way that the federal statute is worded. It gives you 3 different ways to transfer public housing property, and one of them is if that property is obsolete.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they're looking, there's other ways you can transfer it that are equally valid, but HUD relies on this one particularly, and we need that expert opinion to, if we're coming in with that argument, to say we have an obsolescence issue to validate it, and that's what this contract would give us.
Okay. Thank you.
Did I get that right, Jillian?
I believe so.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further questions for Jillian, thank you very much, Jillian.
Thanks.
Chair, 32 items were presented for board approval, with Member Adams abstaining from items 7 and 8. May I have a motion to approve the 32 items with those 2 abstentions?
Motion.
Member Gonzalez?
Yes.
Second,
Gavin.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you very much. Chair, now being that all matters before the board today have been addressed, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Motion, Young.
Second,
Matt.
Second.
thank you, Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
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 None opposed. Thank you very much. The recorded end time for the meeting is 12:27 p.m. Thank you all for all of your support and assistance during 2020, which was a trying year. The next NYCHA board meeting is presently scheduled for Wednesday, January 27th, 2021 at 10 a.m. Thank you all again. Have a happy, blessed, and healthy 2021. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
too.
Happy
New
New
Year.
Year to all.
Enjoy,
Thank you.
everybody.
Sure.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you all.
Aye.
Woohoo.